Hello everybody and welcome to today's Charity Digital webinar with me, Jonathan Chevalier. Today's topic is 4 ways to boost financial success. And with the twin pressures of a recession creating income challenges and increased demand, all triggered by COVID-19, I think this is a really relevant and topical topic to be exploring. We've got a really great panel of speakers today who are going to help us kick around this topic, and I'd like to introduce each of them. First of all, we have Simon Alton, CEO of Community Action Decorum. Simon, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Certainly can. Thank you, Jonathan, and lovely to speak to you. I'm the Chief Executive of Community Action Decorum. We're a CVS-based charity in Hertfordshire. We're probably small to medium in size, but the point being we're locally providing services for people in our area. And in terms of finances, one of the things that's important to understand is we have a wholly owned business that we run as well, and that does translation and interpreting. So the profits that come from that go in to provide money for the charity to run on the basis of the unrestricted funds that go with it. So within the business, there's about 200 to 300 interpreters, and within the charity, we've got about 50 staff who are mostly part-time workers. So with CVS, we also work with lots of local charities where we provide support for them. Some of that's financial, like payroll or finance support. So that gives you a rough idea of my background.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Then I'd like to introduce Kote Lemitse. Kote is the Chief Financial and Administrative Officer of World Learning. Kote, could you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Thank you, Jonathan. Thanks for having me here. My name is Kote Lemitse. I'm the CFO for Learning. World Learning is a international nonprofit charity. Our mission is creating a more peaceful and just world through education, sustainable development, and exchange programs. We operate in more than 50 countries worldwide. Our staff is about 700-ish, give or take, and our revenue is a little more than 100 million. About 2/3 of it comes from grants and contracts, mostly from various government donors or foundations or corporations. And our tuition revenue comes for administering undergraduate, graduate, and PhD programs. And it's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. And then we have Kim Witten. Kim is the Customer Experience Manager of the Sage Foundation. Our viewers are probably familiar with Sage, but may not all be so familiar with the foundation. So it'd be really great, Kim, if you could introduce yourself and say a little bit about the foundation.
Great, thank you, Jonathan. So Sage Foundation is a function within Sage PLC, and Sage is the largest tech company in the UK, part of the FTSE 100. Through Sage Foundation, we support local communities across 22 markets, and we support 3 main pillars. So we're looking to support young people, military veterans, and women. And through that, our 3 key actions are to prepare them for work readiness, fostering entrepreneurship, and then also enabling access to education. The next big thing we've got going with Sage Foundation is soon we'll be officially launching Sage Foundation NPO Success. That's our product program. And that will be providing nonprofits with the technology, the community, and the support that they need. We've spent the last year really focusing on delivering on that promise, which has resulted in the Organisational Financial Literacy research that we're really excited to be sharing with you today.
Brilliant. Thank you, Kim. So across that panel, we've got what? We've got one very large charity, we've got one mid-sized charity, and we've got Sage, who are obviously experts in financial software. So I feel we've got a really broad spread of expertise that can help us dig into this whole subject of how to use finance to be more sustainable as an organization, and to explore also this concept of organisational financial literacy, which I know you'll be telling us more about later, Kim. But before we get started, I thought it'd be really interesting if we had a poll so we can understand more about everybody who's on this call. So if the technology, if we could have the poll put live on the screen, please, I'll help everybody through it. So the question is, how would you rate your confidence considering the following 4 areas of finance? And those areas are bookkeeping, first of all, accounting, financial management, and financial planning and analysis. And we'd like you to just pick one of those choices. Okay, brilliant. So I'll just read this out again for those who are on the browser and can't see it. So we've got 12% who are highly confident in all areas. We've got 22% who are mostly confident in most areas. The largest number, which is 43%, are in saying some confidence in 2 or 3 areas. And then we have 23% who are confident in one area or low confidence in all areas. So we've actually got quite an interesting spread there. Maybe those who are confident in all areas might actually want to join in the debate and contribute their views through the chat as well, because I'm sure there can be a lot of learning delegate to delegate, as well as just through the panel here today. And I should stress, in terms of questions, as we go through, you can raise a question at any time by clicking on the Q&A button. And you can also upvote other people's questions. So if you like someone else's question and you want that to go to the top of the list to make sure that we're going to answer it, just click on the thumbs up button and then that'll bring it to my attention. We've obviously got a bit to discuss before we directly open up though. So what I will do now is start to explore a little bit more. Really, I think start with the challenges that we're seeing with charities and non-profit organisations overall. So maybe start with Kote. What do you see as the financial challenges for non-profit organisations at this point in time?
The challenges that we see, and this was our organization maybe 7-8 years ago, is having a hosted solution of accounting system that doesn't requires constant maintenance, having a paper-based accounting system where all the receipts need to be collected and submitted for reimbursement, having data not flow from one system to another, requiring manual data entry, and just finance spending a lot of time on counting beans as opposed to looking forward and looking taking the organization to the next level. So it's moving from 20th century accounting to 21st century is where we see a lot of medium and small nonprofits struggling to get there.
Yeah, and I guess one of the things that's quite interesting about your organization is you have lots of branches in different parts of the world. So some of those are really very, very small branches, so just like a micro charity on its own, and some of those are much larger as well. So I guess you see that whole spread within your organization.
Yes, we do, and we're gradually rolling out our global accounting system to them one country at a time, and we're probably about 90% there. And once we reach the 50%, everyone heard about the benefits of the 21st century cloud-based accounting system, so everyone wanted to join. So now the remaining 10% are asking us, can you get us this system rolled out to us as well?
Let's go to you now, Simon. What's your perspective? Are you seeing the same things, or have you seen different financial challenges?
I think we've got some similarity. I recognise some of the bits that Katie was saying about bean counting as opposed to forward planning, and we're lucky that we've got trustees who come from a financial background in a big multinational, and what is driving us to try and forward plan a bit better. But yeah, I mean, certainly one of the issues that we face in this post-COVID world is that whilst grants and commissions are okay, the unrestricted funds have been hit, and that's driven our business profits down as well. So we get to a point where cash is very much the thing that we've had to keep monitoring. And because we've focused on cash flow and forecasting and debtors, and because we're limited with the resource we've got in the finance team, that's kind of been at the expense of ongoing management reporting and journaling. So that's been quite difficult for me to manage the business with one side of the information but not the other. And today, just to be really topical, of course, we've had the announcements about the replacement for the furlough scheme. And that's really helpful, because what we've been trying to put together over the last few weeks is package to retain as many jobs as possible across the business. And without that core information, that's a real challenge.
Yeah, so I think across the two of you, you've kind of really incorporated what I would see very much as the two key challenges. But Kim, you've done a lot of research on the sector. What's come out from that research?
Yeah, so mirroring some of the things that both Cote and Simon have said, more generally across the sector and based on our research, for a variety of reasons, many people are doing the bare minimum when it comes to finance reporting, and so that's resulting in infrequent and insufficient reporting. There is, as has been mentioned, a huge reliance on Excel, or the exclusive use of Excel or paper-based accounting methods, and you really need that real-time visibility of your grant management, especially as you grow. So, and a real-time view of your assets, what's driving the revenues. This just isn't possible with cumbersome Excel processes. So doing that transition, but that's a challenge. Doing that software transition. Many nonprofit organizations, they're just not aware of the tools available, or they can't access them. Or there's other things, and the big one that kind of came out of our research is capacity. So that was the biggest obstacle to getting work done, was capacity, and that affected all organization sizes, all roles, just across the board. So the research is really focused around, and the tools and the things that we're doing about it is around easing up capacity.
Good. That's really helpful to understand that. Now, I know you're going to talk a little bit later on about some of the ways of getting around the obstacles, but we've touched briefly already on this term, organisational financial literacy. Could you understand what that is, what you mean by it, so that we've got a shared understanding across everybody joining us today?
Sure, and we created this term, organizational financial literacy, really out of the research. And what this is, it's defined as having the tools, the capacity, and expertise to be able to manage an organization's finances. And we have this model that broadly represents the different levels of organizational financial literacy, and that was kind of reflected in the poll that you just took at the start. So those levels start with bookkeeping, and then they move on to accounting, financial management, and then financial planning and analysis. And the idea is that as organizations grow in financial maturity and develop a deeper understanding of these financial processes, they'll gain a higher degree of organizational financial literacy, or OFL, and they'll move up through the levels. So our aim is really to provide the research, the framework, and the resources through what we're calling 4 avenues, and we'll get into that a little bit later, so that organizations can achieve higher levels of OFL and be sustainable and navigate any challenges that they face.
Good. Now, I'm interested in what the other members of our panel think of this concept as well, because this is obviously a new term, organisational financial literacy. And I know that Simon and Cote haven't had a lot of time to absorb it, but maybe start with you, Cote. How does it hit you?
Yeah. So I look at it as a drive analogy of driving a car. To go from point A to point B, you need to have a car, you need to know how to drive, and you shouldn't be intoxicated to drive. So having a car is like having a tool, and having a capacity is you need to know how to drive, and having expertise is like having driver's license. And so it's you can't do that without having all those 3 aligned. And what I noticed is if one of them is lacking and the other 2 are there, you're still it's not working. So in our case, 7-8 years ago, we had the capacity, we had the skill set, my expertise was the same, my team is the same, but we didn't have tools. So we were just using wrong tools in a wrong way, and the outcome was pretty bad compared to where we are right now, where all 3 of them are more or less at the same level, and our OFL has transitioned from where it was to significantly higher over the last 7-8 years.
Mm-hmm. And Simon, do you have anything to add to that from your kind of perspective and your experience?
Yeah, well, I liked it as a model. It helped me. I saw it not so much as a car, but as a set of steps. And I can see where we sit within those steps. And each, if there's a step missing at any point, then the rest, you can't really get to the next step in the process. And certainly for us as an organisation, we've got certainly those bottom two steps without any problems. Then we start to look at that financial management, and that's suffered under stress. But it's interesting that out of COVID, what we're starting to do is realise more about that almost that fourth step of financial planning and analysis is becoming more and more essential for us as a charity. And even talking to some of the really small charities we work with, where they're turning over thousands or tens of thousands a year, actually getting to a point where you can plan is what's going to make the difference for them at the moment.
Yeah, and that takes me to really my next question. And I think this is one for Kim. What do you see as the benefits of having higher levels of organisational financial literacy?
Yeah, so there's a variety of benefits. I mean, obviously not just the increasing the skills and the capacity of your organization, but it's going to be things like having the data, having the information, being able to answer questions, and all of that leads to things like supporting the delivery and the reporting of grants. You're going to have the discipline to manage growth. You're going to have the ability to navigate setbacks. I know I mentioned that earlier, but that's going to be a thing that's going to be a recurring theme. And the information to provide accountability to stakeholders. So that's going to make you in turn become more appealing prospect to potential funders. So yeah, there's quite a few things, and we'll probably get into more of those benefits along the way as well, as we talk through some of the other steps of OFL.
And in terms of how can an organisation actually go around increasing its level of OFL? And I guess this takes us to the 4 ways in particular. Could you explain what they are?
Yeah, so we've got 4 avenues that we've identified, or 4 ways to boost financial success and raise your OFL. And those are roughly, or just in brief. So we've got the practical avenue, and that's all about software and processes. We've got the educational avenue, and that's training and the education that you need. We've got the supportive avenue, and that's all about having some sort of extended support network. And then the social avenue, which is about networking and best practices. So I'm happy to go into a little bit deeper on any one of those, or we can get some feedback from others. I'd be curious, what's kind of, relevant right now.
I mean, let's go to Simon and Cote on this, because from my perspective, I imagine that what is going to be most helpful of those probably depends on where you are as an organisation. But I'm interested in what Simon and Cote think. Maybe start with Simon.
Yeah, I quite like the fact that there's a networking part in there, and that peer-to-peer. And my previous role was an operations director for a charity, and we outsourced our finances. And when we were talking about this earlier, Jonathan said to me, how did you know who to pick? And the way we found out was through a peer network. I spoke to somebody who knew a lot of good accountants and could recommend the ones that were good. So I think that's a really vital part of what you're suggesting within those 4 ways. I'm a believer in the educational bit, and I think the software, there's always bits in software you can improve. So they're 4 good areas. Perhaps that's just, as you say, it's about where you look at it from. And for me, networking was key.
That was something that was born out of the research as well, is people really wanted that the ability to foster relationships, to ask questions, to bounce ideas, learn best practices. So
I would echo Simon's comments about networking. In my experience has been that a lot of key insights and a lot of suggestions and ideas I get from my peers that I constantly communicate with. So learning from peer organizations. If you have a problem, there's a pretty good chance that someone else had that problem before you and they solved it. So why reinvent the wheel when you can piggyback on someone else's success?
Good. And Kim, I know that at the Sage Foundation, you've actually been doing some work to look at how you can actually support each of these 4 avenues. Could you just share some of those plans?
Yeah, great. So we've been working on interventions and tools and things to support each of the four. So starting with the practical, so this is all around software and processes. We're expanding the provision of low-cost accounting software platforms for more nonprofits. For example, we offer Intact 20% off to all eligible UK nonprofits and related organization types. So that's available at, if you go to sage.com/NPO Success, you can learn more about Intact and the discounts that we offer. We also offer discounts on smaller sized organizations and other software as well that we offer through Sage. For the educational aspect, so, the software is only as good as people knowing how to use it. And we found that a lot of times people have the software, but they find it too daunting, or it's too complex, or they know that they're not making the most of it. Oh, the sun's come over. So the educational, the training and resources area, we're doing several things. So this creation of case studies, how-to guides, videos, that sort of thing, training materials that are specifically aimed at nonprofits and would help address these skills gaps and ease issues around capacity. So that's going to do things like make automation of time-consuming tasks a lot simpler and just really build people's confidence. But there's still going to be times when people are stuck and there's things that they need. And that's where we realize there needs to be some sort of extended support service or hands-on or bespoke help, support with getting set up properly, or other tasks, one-to-one coaching for ongoing needs, that sort of thing. And one of the things that we are expanding is, so Sage as a company, all 13,000 employees are encouraged to take 5 paid days to support local communities, so volunteering. And we realize that there's a lot of expertise in the business. So we're opening up opportunities for skills-based volunteering. So ways that we can support nonprofits and people in local communities with the skills that we have at Sage. And that's just one of the ways that we can do that kind of extended support service, or just really help nonprofits through our expertise, through volunteering. This is a work in progress. We're piloting those opportunities, but there's other things that we're working on as well. And then lastly, for the social avenue, and that's all around networking and best practice, we've created so there's Sage City, which exists, and these are peer-to-peer forums for any customers or anybody to join can join Sage City, and they're typically product support forums, which are great, and they're championed by Sage colleagues. But we've just recently launched nonprofit-specific forums as well, and so we're encouraging everybody to join those. Those are live. They're providing a platform for nonprofits to foster relationships, share best practices between their peers, and really become a central place for announcements about the other avenues, training opportunities, resources. And this is a community that we're building from the ground up. So you'll see me there, and your peers, invite them along, and it's what we make of it.
Good. Excellent. So that's very helpful to understand that. What we're going to do now, I think, is we'll start to open up to more general questions. And I see that there are quite a number starting to come through already. And we can also dig more into this subject of organisational financial literacy. We're kind of going to go where the audience wants us to go with this from here. But just before we do that, I'd like to take another quick poll, because I'm really keen to get the feedback of our audience to kind of understand which of the 4 avenues resonates with them, which they think would be the most helpful as well. So if we could put the next poll live, please. So just reading it out again for those who can't see it. Which of the 4 avenues would be of most interest or positive impact for you right now? And just to remind you, those 4 avenues are more access to software and guidance on processes, more training and resources supporting skills development, more access to professionalized support services, and finally, access to a community of support comprising peers and other volunteers. So what do we have? We have the most popular answer, with 41%, was training and resources to support skills development. That is followed quite closely by more access to software and guidance on processes, with 36%. Then a tie between more access to professionalised support services on 12% and access to a community of support comprising peers and other volunteers also on 12%. So thank you for that. That's really useful to understand. Obviously, it's not a scientific poll, it's just a survey of the people here, but it's really great to get that understanding and just see where our audience is, and that can actually help channel how this goes forward as well, the work with the Sage Foundation on this. But let's open up with the generalized questions, because we've got quite a few. Got one that's been heavily upvoted. So what financial planning tools would you recommend for a small charity? So I don't know who wants to start on this one.
I hate silences, Jonathan. We work with lots of small charities. It depends, I suppose, how small you are. I think it's worth the investment of a finance package that you can keep track of your spend, and that allows you to run reports quickly and easily. That makes sense to you. And then it sort of depends on your turnover as to what the best of those are. I mean, I'm not employed by Sage to promote them, but we do use Sage as it happens, because it provides us with reports that are really helpful and that start to deliver it. I think at the moment, knowing what you've spent and what you've had in is vital. So that's your profit and loss account. Have that in there. So a tool for that, and then I guess you start to forecast what you're going to spend into the future, and that's about knowing where your incomes are, what your grants are going to be like, and how long they're going to be for.
I can add on that. There are a myriad of software platforms out there. The key thing to look at is how well it integrates with your ERP, and whether data flow from whether it's chart of accounts or actual expenses can go back and forth between the ERP and the FP&A tool. We actually use, and if you can get the built-in one that comes out of the box and is available inside of the system, that's even better. We are using, obviously I'm not paid to advertise this, but we're using Sage Intacct's built-in FP&A tool for it.
Okay, good. So there's some really helpful suggestions there overall. Let's go to the next one, and this is a really good one, because this is all about, I think this relates back to the fact that we found that one of the big challenges for a lot of organizations was lack of time and lack of capacity. But of course, one of the big challenges when you need to make change is it takes time to make change. So this question from Catherine is, do you have any tips for creating the time and capacity to make the changes that are required?
Not really, just weekends and evenings.
You got anything to add to that, Simon?
Yeah, well, I suppose one of the things that we've done in terms of making capacity is to bring in extra staff on a short-term contract, just to cover some of the things at the bottom end of the line, the bookkeeping stuff. So perhaps that's some of it. There's also at the moment the Kickstart scheme that the government has offered, where if you want to employ somebody who's under 24 for 6 months, they'll pay the wages. And so that might give you 6 months of somebody doing some work in your finance team, because there's a lot of interest in the 18 to 24-year-olds in working in finance, to make some time to free up to do some of that preparation work for nothing.
Yeah.
Jonathan, on a more serious note, though, what we found that works is we started automating one process at a time, and as you automate that one process, the time that was going to do it manually gets freed up, and then you can reinvest that time to automate the next process and the next process until you get to the point where you're closing the months much faster, and that frees up the time to do more value-added work for the organization. So it's just one process at a time. Move it from doing it manually to automate if you can, and that saves you time for the next one.
Yeah, brilliant. And I've just seen in the chat that Ted has said the same thing as well. So that must be a great idea. And I think building on Simon's point, there are actually volunteers out there as well who are often happy to step in and help in various respects. And they might be able to give you some expertise around how you change the process. Or if you need more bandwidth, I guess around the mundane, it might be, as Simon says, you need to just buy that in. I know that costs. I know that's really challenging in the current environment, but that's actually likely to pay back in the future.
I'll add to the capacity.
Sorry, go on, Kim.
No worries. I'll add to the capacity and some tips. So one of the things we found in the research with things that were causing this capacity issue, what that was attributed to were things like people spending too much time. If there was knowledge gaps, people were spending too much time on basic tasks. And then going back to the time issue, people being pulled away from other tasks. And that was often due to people not having, or organizations, I should say, not having a dedicated role or finance person within their organization. So people wearing too many hats or doing too many things. And then, so I would suggest, and there's some other reasons as well, but I think those are the main ones. And I would suggest maybe doing an assessment or asking some questions and trying to get a lay of the land of, where is the, where are the blockers? So what is capacity the key blocker, or is it time, or is it something else? Is it lack of tools or resources? And then asking yourself, well, what do I need, or how bad is it, or what is it stopping me from doing? Just to kind of have that really big picture of what it is you need to do, and then maybe which of the 4 avenues would help you with that.
So I'm going to throw in one of my own questions on this, because I felt that this question about how we create the capacity, and saying that, well, sometimes we actually need to spend a little bit more to create that capacity before we improve. That kind of begs a big question, and that is, what's the return on investment from having a strong finance system? So I don't know if you've maybe looked at that, Cote, and you could give us a view.
So there are we've been measuring return on investment for this for the last several years, and there are 2 ways to measure the actual real pounds or dollars saved in the organization, and that's in our case, every time we replace or someone leaves from the finance team, we ask the question, well, can his or her task be replaced by the system and automated? And the answer in like 7 out of 10 times is yes. So in the last 7 years, I think we downsized at least 5 or 6 FTEs within finance department that just generated straight out savings for the organization. But the bigger savings is automating processes that when you don't have people shipping documents back and forth in the organization, that's a tremendous saving, and it's good for the planet as well. Then you have savings in terms of not making wrong decisions, and it's really kind of hard to measure what would have happened if you had made the wrong decision. And what the way our increased OFL helps us to get there is we close the months faster. Because most of our closing processes are automated, and that we used to close in 25 days. That would leave 5 days to make decisions based on what happened last month, and that's looking in the rear view mirror all the time. And now we close in 7 to 10 days, so that allows us to know what happened in the back and it leaves us 25 days to make decisions going forward. And those decisions are saving time and money for the organization. So that's a huge return on investment. It's just hard to measure in terms of dollar and pound terms, but otherwise they are real returns on investment. In our case, just the actual measurable ones were positive ROI. So we sort of stopped measuring there and say, well, we did our job.
I've got some handy stats here to add to support what you were saying, Cote. So we've seen that our Sage Intacct customers similar to what you were saying about being able to do your monthly closing in 7 to 10 days, many of our customers there with Intact have cut that monthly close process in half to just 1 week. You were mentioning also the automation and all of that. And so I've got another handy stat, which is Intact customers automated manual entry and increased efficiency by 35%. So it's not always easy to quantify these things, but we have been able to do that with Intact. And then cutting the audit preparation time in half, that's a good one too. So I'll just leave those three, but yeah, there are ways we've found that with Intact that we can quantify that. It's good stuff.
Good, thanks for that. I think it's such an important area. I'm going to go into a question now. It's actually sitting in the answered list, but we didn't read it out. And I think it's been so upvoted that I want to make sure that we actually talk about it verbally as well. So it's a question from Dominic Black saying, I'm interested in how to communicate financial information to trustees. When we present accounts, people glaze over. I'm sure that's a challenge that many of us have seen at different times in our careers. And I know that Simon, you typed in some views on this, so I'll go straight to you and ask you to kind of talk about that for all our listeners as well, please.
Well, I guess most people will recognise that one, because for many trustees, they volunteer to help an organisation because their motivation is they think they're going to do good for society, and what they don't realise, as a trustee, they have a legal responsibility for the finances of the charity. And if their house was on the line, then they'd pay more attention to the information. So I think one of the things that we did is we've invested in, partly in our recruitment of trustees, so recruited trustees with better financial background, and then work on the basis that if half of them are paying attention, then at least we have some interest. And training the trustees and making them understand their role was very important. And the other thing that I think, when Dominic refers to how to present it, and I think actually think about the presentation, it's worth investing occasionally in a graph or a pie chart or something that's easily digestible to those that don't like the numbers, because for some people a sheet of numbers, it could be just coloured in by their 12-year-old, that's 5-year-old child. 12-year-old get in the lines, wouldn't they? Whereas actually put a graph in front of them, this is what's happening to the income or the expenditure, and a pie chart, this is where the breakdown is. And I've found that's really worked with those that normally sit there and fall asleep during the finance reports.
And to add to that, we have a quarterly reporting to our board of trustees, and they don't like numbers. They do like charts and graphs and colorful indicators of how the organization is doing. So we've worked with the board to define KPIs, the key performance indicators, and things like our cash position, things like our borrowing on our line of credit, things like our pipeline for grants and contracts, things like our enrollment numbers for tuition-based programs, and do it based on that with very easily identifiable whether things are going well or not. So what we did actually is created the dashboard inside of our accounting system. So once a quarter before the board meeting, I just print that dashboard and share it, and that gives them all the sort of indicators of how the organization is doing.
Brilliant. Good. Now, we've got some questions that are very Sage specific, so I do want to make sure we address those. And the first of these, and I'll put this straight to Kim, is, do Sage provide some free support to small charities?
We don't have free support built in at the moment per se. There is support available with the product subscriptions, but this is something that we're looking to exploring right now through the avenue and through our skills-based volunteering programs. We're piloting some of those things. And really right now we're trying to understand what is the support that's needed and how best can we provide that. But we don't have a direct program for it kind of built in for nonprofits. We have our basic support channels that come with the software subscriptions. But yeah, we're working on kind of understanding what's needed for the sector and then finding the best ways to provide those interventions. We have the materials that we're building right now for the Organizational Financial Literacy project. So that's all the tools and the resources that will be provided on an Organizational Financial Literacy hub that will be launching soon. So stay tuned for that. So that's going to have some how-to videos and some checklists for best practices to help you kind of monitor and measure your progress and things. And then of course there's the peer support forums through Sage City, which are live now. So and lots more on the way. Yeah. So I hope that answers and provides a range of opportunities, but would love to hear more.
Yeah, there's a question that kind of builds straight on that actually, in terms of how do people access these resources and forums?
Right. Okay. So you can sign up for Sage City now. So that's at sagecity.com. And then you'll want to search for the nonprofit forums under the global tab. So I can send a link out because that's probably the easiest way after this, if we can send something around. We've also got the product program that as it currently is today can be found at sage.com/NPO Success. But we will be rolling out more and expanding that program soon, and then adding the Organizational Financial Literacy Hub. So stay tuned and keep checking back with Sage City and NPO Success to find those next announcements.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Going to go into some other areas now. There are some more Sage questions, but I want to have a little bit of variety. So we'll come back to those. So could you suggest ideas / good practice for financial analysis beyond the P&L? This is from Nwala Ryan. Maybe go to Kote first of all on this one.
So beyond the P&L, look at the. So I can tell you what I look as a CFO beyond P&L. I look at our pipeline, which is what's happening in the future and what to expect. I look at the what's going on in the country or in the world that can impact my revenue streams, and sort of get ready for the bad news to come down the pike or good news. Obviously, no one could foresee the COVID-19 impact, but coming down the pike. But now that we're here, it's our obligation to look at it. We look at how much time we're spending in performing certain tasks. So that helps me to analyze, well, where is my finance team's as a resource is being spent on. And if we're spending a lot of time doing account reconciliations, then, well, maybe I'm not using my finance team as a resource very well, and maybe I can automate some of that function. So look at where you're spending most of your time, and can you make that function more automated and save time and money. It's a couple of tips I can give.
Thank you, Kote. Simon, have you got anything to add to that?
Well, similarly to Kote, but I look at forecasts. That's the key one, and I look at debtors very regularly to make sure that we're getting in the money, because we've historically been very poor at we do things and then we send out invoices and we don't check if they're paid. So that one's a big one for me. But yeah, those two are very good. And cash flow. The other thing I do very regularly is just look at what the cash in hand is at the bank, and I do that probably most days just to see where we're at, and if anything's gone out, I don't know.
Good, thank you. Next question, and this is a good one, and it actually ties quite nicely because it sits in our model overall of organisational financial literacy, and it regards reserves policy. So what are the things that charities need to consider in designing the reserves policy? And this is a question from, I'm not quite sure how to pronounce the name, Elise Omar, I think it is.
I can give you some thoughts of ours. The recommendation of 3 to 6 months of turnover is what we put into our policy. And then we started to look at what that might mean in terms of what unrestricted reserves we got and what restricted reserves we have, and then put that into a sort of period of time that we were willing to accept, which is we accept 12 weeks. So we do a calculation, and we've got a little bit of spreadsheet. Back to Excel, Kim, I'm very sorry. But we have a little spreadsheet where if it drops below the number 12, all the cells on the spreadsheet turn red. We just type in some numbers of what we have available.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Simon. Got a question which relates to the 4 areas again. So this is one for Kim from Dawn. Are the Sage 4 areas across all of the Sage software platforms?
So right now with our organizational financial literacy, we are, we're focusing on the finance component first and foremost. But all of, I assume that you mean things like other areas of the organization, so like payroll or HR. Is that?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So these things are all related, right? So you can't cleanly divide them. So I think we're starting with the financial aspect first, and that will inevitably help all the other areas. But the resources and the things that we're building. So right now, let's say on Sage City, you have there's forums and topics in the nonprofit areas for the different products that we offer. And then we also offer discounts through our product program on payroll, on Sage People, which is our HR software, so various things. So we are offering support, but we're focusing primarily on where we feel the need is greatest right now, which is that getting people through those 4 levels from bookkeeping, accounting, financial management, and planning and analysis. But of course, not ignoring that there's these other areas and aspects. So we're building those up too.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thanks for that. Got a question here, which it relates to some of the points that we were talking about with the challenges of resourcing finance. So both getting the right volume and the right skills level overall. I'm interested from our panel in what's the best way to actually set around getting the right resourcing? Because obviously it's a challenge. Charities typically pay somewhat less than commercial businesses, so it's a competition for resource. Maybe start with you, Simon.
It's because it's a difficult question to answer, isn't it? And I think my experience would be, if you're not sure, then keep looking. And be willing to take the time to get the right person for the role. And that's quite, it seems a really obvious answer, but you have to be quite brave to sit there thinking, I'm going to have nobody in post for another 3 months while I go through this process again and try and recruit somebody who's good and high quality. There are people for whom, charities offer a real benefit. And I know a lot of people who are, CFOs in big companies, who, as they come towards the end of their career, actually would just like to step back, deal with the charity for a little while, and feel they're giving something back, and they're not doing it for the money. So that's probably where to start looking. The other thing you can consider is outsourcing, and having done outsourcing, it's a different set of challenges. And finding the right people to outsource to is equally a challenge. So talk to that network of people you've got to find the right one. But that gives you a lot more flexibility and freedom. And you can outsource people for a number of months while you find the right person to fit in, and that saves you a bit of continuity. So that would be my thoughts.
To add on that, we are competing with for-profit companies who have more money to outbid us for the talent, and that's not just finance, but also other professional services, whether it's IT or HR skills that you can apply in for-profit or non-profit world. What I found works best for us is hiring people who believe in the mission of the organization, and they tend to stay longer. They tend to contribute more to the organization and put their skills to work. I myself have only worked for non-profit organization, and that's on purpose. I don't want to work for for-profit organization.
Yeah. Okay, and this is a question from Helen. Can you recommend any other sources of networking and support for non-Sage users? And maybe start with Kim on this. I know you've got a very Sage perspective on this, but I know you have also been kind of thinking more broadly about how to help the charity audience, the finance people within charities as a whole, more widely.
Yeah, we've done quite a bit of research into kind of understanding what's already out there, especially with respect to OFL. I think one thing that's been really interesting to me to see is a lot of, especially in the last 7 months or so, is a lot of the umbrella organizations. So obviously Charity Digital, but organizations that support other organizations. And seeing them become more prominent, more visible, and I've kind of been starting a list of who those are and what sorts of things that they focus on and offer. I don't know of a single resource or kind of social network for this sort of thing yet, but so a couple things. So Sage City and the nonprofit forums, they're really not just for Sage customers. We intend this to be a peer-to-peer support network, and really about sharing best practices and just helping each other. And I think that leads to my second point, which is, this whole sector is about collaboration, and I think we're not going to get anywhere if we don't start kind of joining up and sharing the things we know. And just working together on finding out what the needs are and seeing how we can meet them. So it's not just Sage. I think we can find ways to because we don't want to, even at Sage, we don't want to reinvent the wheel. If there's an organization out there that's already doing something, we don't want to reinvent that. We want to work with them and collaborate and share that knowledge. Research isn't any good unless you share it.
Yeah.
I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, it does. I don't know, Simon and Kote, whether you've had any experiences that would help as well in this area.
A lot of stuff on YouTube, Jonathan, and that's if you're stuck with things, or most software, you can go onto YouTube and type in your problem, and somebody's sat there doing it in front of a camera. The other thing is, go down the pub and talk to people about what they do, and make a note in your little black book of all the ones who say they do something in finance, and then God, price for a pint is possibly worth it.
Yeah.
I found an organization called Humentum, which is a UK and US based organization that it's a membership organization, but has a vast resources of peer-to-peer networking, and usually asking a question there in the right forum gets you the answer there. So I highly recommend.
Thank you. This is a software question, this next one from Susan Dean. So I'd like more information on software that works alongside Sage 50 to have some sort of dashboard for trustee and stakeholder reporting. I use P&L departments via pivot tables, but want something to look more pretty than Excel. Anybody have any suggestions?
I'll jump in and say that so I don't know about Sage 50 in particular, because that's not my area of expertise, but I do know with accounting and Intact, there is a huge push to get app integrations going and do all of those things. So I think even today, Intact, I don't think it's available in the UK yet, but they just launched their next gen AI to do timesheets and kind of all these different things to automate and make things really efficient. So I can't say specifically for that particular ask, but I know that there's a huge drive to get, I think app integrations are the way forward for us, and that's really key. So there are things out there already, and I can follow up afterwards and find out, kind of what those might be. But yeah, Simon and Kote will be able to say what they've used.
Yeah. Okay, brilliant.
We used built-in Sage Intacct reporting capabilities that haven't used Excel for a long time now.
Good, thank you. Now I'm conscious we're running out of time here. We've got a number of questions which are quite kind of Sage technical, very specific questions. So what I was thinking the best thing we do with those is we actually pick those up and answer those directly to the people offline. Is that sort of okay with you, Kim?
Yeah, that'd be great, and that will help get some kind of really targeted answers, because I'm sure I don't have all the answers right now. So let's do that.
Yeah, it must be a challenge, because obviously Sage have a number of products in this area, and you can't be expected to be an expert in all of those. So I think this is a really great point to wrap. What I should say is Kim's mentioned a number of links to things like Sage City and things like that. We will publish all of those in the when we publish this recording, and we'll put the slides online as well. So all of that information will be available on our website within the next week. Let's wrap up then. I really want to thank all of our speakers for joining us today. I think we've had a really fascinating conversation. It's been great to explore the concepts of organisational financial literacy and understand how they can help charities and non-profit organisations to be more successful. And then it's just been great to dig down on the individual experiences of each of the panelists as well and share those. And I hope that's really been helpful to everybody who's joined us today. I want to do a quick shout out to a couple of things we've got coming up, which I think might be of interest to our guests today as well. So we have our digital fundraising day, which is an virtual conference. So we're going to have 10 sessions spread across 2 streams on October the 15th. So do please visit our website and sign up for that in the very near future. And also our next webinar, which we've got coming up. So that's all from us today. Thank you very much for joining us all, and hope you'll join us again in the near future. Goodbye.